Praetorians. Man, this is probably one of the coolest names ever made by humankind. I mean, even if you have no idea who the Praetorians were in ancient Rome, if you hear the name, you know we're talking about someone cool and badass. And it doesn't really matter the setting. Is it in classical antiquity? Praetorians are cool. Is it in a fantasy setting? Well, yeah, Praetorian. Like, you imagine this like god of wood dressed in medieval plate armor because it's fantasy, but they are the Praetorians. Blades on fire. Or in a future setting, like literally. And then you've got these massive spaceships with inside the Praetorians with like the laser eyes. It doesn't matter. Praetorian equals cool. Can we all agree with that? Now, after saying that, do you know who the actual Praetorians were? Well, maybe some of you will know that sometimes they could be referred as an elite corps, military guard, specifically bodyguard of the emperors. Sure, but there still is a lot more we can say. When were they created? How did they originate? What sort of equipment were they wearing? How did their ranks work? How much money were they making? Well, have a seat. I've got a lot to tell you today. Well, first and foremost, who founded the Praetorians? Well, this is where we get a little bit into a debate, because some people could say it was the first emperor, Octavianus Augustus or Octavian, who actually created the elite military corps as we understand it. Other people might say, no, the way they actually are in their fullest definition, it would be Tiberius, so the second emperor. And we'll dive into why some people think one way and some people think the other. But then again, there is a very, very strong connection also to Scipio Africanus and specifically his campaigns in Spain. And that's just looking at it from the perspective of modern historiography, because if we have to look at it from the perspective of the ancients, well, then we have Plutarch, Dionysius of Halicarnassus, and Titus Livius actually tell us that the founder of the Praetorian Corps would be Romulus himself. We'll get to that. So let's review each of these connections one by one. There is a very strong connection between the first emperor, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus Augustus, and the Praetorian Guard, since he was the one who established the Praetorians as a permanent defending legion, protectors of Rome and Italia. Cicero already uses the term Praetorian to define a cohort of bodyguards of elite soldiers in 43 BC, as they are mentioned during the Battle of Modena, and both Mark Antony, Marcus Antonius, and Octavian had their own Praetorian Guards. The Praetorian Guard used in battle is already mentioned during the Battle of Pistoia, which was fought in 62 BC, as reported by Sallust or Gaius Sallustius Crispus. It's actually in this case better to call him Sallust so you don't get confused with this other guy, Salutius, although then again, if you see when he was born, unless he was a freaking prophet, yeah. Anyways, this guy tells us that during this battle, Marcus Petreius used the Praetorian Guard in battle against his enemy Lucius Sergius Catilina. Now, I usually don't use Wikipedia, but in this case they described it correctly, so I can read it since we double-checked it. When did he die? 62 BC. When was the battle fought? 62 BC. Yeah, he died during the battle, but check this out. On the day of the battle, Antonius gave operational command to Marcus Petreius, an experienced lieutenant, who broke through the Catilinarian center with the Praetorian cohort, forcing Catilin's men to fight. Catiline and his diehard supporters fought bravely and were annihilated. So already before the establishment of the empire, and therefore the first emperor, we know that we have these elite cohorts. Although then again, when I say cohort, do remember that Praetorian cohorts function differently from regular legionary cohort in the sense that normally a Praetorian cohort is made of 1,000 strong. And the Praetorian Guard that were defending Italy at the time, how many did we have? Well, we have numbers that mention up to 8,000 soldiers, but already by the times of Emperor Octavian, Tacitus mentions 9 cohorts of Praetorians, which would be 9,000 men, while Cassius Dio mentions 10, so 10,000 armed. What's special about this first century Praetorian Guard under Octavianus Augustus is the fact that where these soldiers would originate from, because, you know, he had very specific rules and regulations as to who could become a Praetorian and where they would be stationed. So to start in order, who could become a Praetorian? Well, under Augustus, you had to be from central Italy, specifically from the regions of Latium, Etruria, and Umbria. So all Praetorians under Augustus were Italians. Also, of these 9 or 10,000 men, 3,000 would be stationed in Rome, while the remaining soldiers would be stationed in various areas surrounding or around the capital. Initially, under Augustus, if you were chosen and given the privilege of becoming and serving as a Praetorian, you would have to serve for 12 years, although then again, during his later reign, he will increase the service to a minimum of 16 years. And after your service will be over, Cassius Dio tells us that you will be given a 20,000 sesterces of leave. That's a lot of money. Regardless of all we have said about Augustus, the reason why some people and some historians consider Tiberius to be the one emperor that should be connected to the Praetorian Guard the way we understand it, so Praetorians per se, is because he was the one that would consolidate them. In other words, he is the one who deployed all Praetorian cohorts within the capital, also building specialized Praetorian barracks, or castra praetoria. We are told that this was done, of course, in order to avoid the problems coming with fragmentation, compartmentalization, and the idea that a military body that is unified would be a lot more effective to deploy quickly. But one thing that is important to underline is that Tiberius made this move under the counsel of a specific historical personage that we should discuss, Seianus. Seianus was, at the time, the Praetorian prefect. So the fact that he wanted the Praetorian Guard to be unified and consolidated into one single point was not just to make it more reactive and therefore more effective on the fields of battle, but it clearly was also to increase the political power of himself and the Praetorians. Now, the reason why Tiberius decided to play ball with that is because he could also benefit from it. It was mutually beneficial, politically, socially, and economically. In other words, with the Praetorian Guard consolidated under his command through the Praetorian prefect in Rome, Tiberius ensured military pressure on the city, controlling the masses and increasing his power. Now, one more thing that has been proposed by a French historian is the idea that the Praetorians were connected to Tiberius because of his birth sign, meaning the zodiac sign connected to the emperor, Scipio. Now, since this has to do with the sort of symbolism that we see on some of their helmets, maybe I'll talk about it specifically on a later section of this video dedicated to their equipment and armor, so do watch until the end. Okay, so that's when it comes to the first two emperors and how they are connected to the guard itself. Now today we'll talk about other emperors, we'll talk about Pertinax, we'll talk about Septimius Severus and his reforms. There is a lot to say, but before we do that, before we move forward in time, allow me to take you back, not only to the Republic, but to the Regnum Romanum. What were the origins of the Praetorians? The three ancient writers, Dionysius of Halicarnassus, Plutarch, and Titus Livius, attribute to Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome, the creation of a specialized military corps of 10 men for every curia, so a total of 300 armed of the best warriors. These were called celeres, which can normally be translated as the fast ones. Now, of course, when we dive into mythology, we don't know how much we can trust it, but one thing is important to say, these celeres were mounted. We're talking cavalry. These mounted soldiers armed with spears were in fact the personal bodyguard of the king and subsequently senators. However, this royal guard will be removed by Numa Pompilius, the good king, who disbands them. If we read Titus Livius, he confirms that this royal elite corps of bodyguards comes back in the early Republic. He mentions these dictators' cohorts, although once again, do remember that when we use the word cohort, depending on what period, the meaning will be different. So even though we said that in imperial times a Praetorian cohort would be constituted of 1,000 strong, at this point it's difficult to say how many men we had, also because a military cohort as a tactical unit, particularly under Scipio Africanus, consisted of 480 men. That's not the type of cohort we are talking about in the early Republic, however. How many men? Difficult to say, as this type of cohort was created by Scipio Africanus in Spain and only subsequently organized under Gaius Marius and his reforms. Now, the connection with the early types of royal bodyguards and the Praetorians is fascinating, but I think if we really want to find a unbroken line of connection from Imperial Roman Praetorians and the earliest we can go, we need to connect them to Scipio Africanus. It is in fact this general or legate that establishes a specific elite corps with the function of protecting the praetor, which I believe in English is pronounced praetor, but I'm gonna say praetor because because glory to Rome. Also keep in mind that these men were paid 6 times the normal salary of a legionary. This of course will also connect to the sort of equipment that they could buy, but we'll get back to that in the equipment section. Now, since I am making a strong assumption here when I say I do believe that the real origin of the Praetorians would be connected to Scipio Africanus, I think I should tell you where that statement comes from. And it comes specifically from the ancient sources and from a very interesting character, Sextus Pompey. Latin name Sextus Pompeius Magnus Pius, was a Roman commander who tells us specifically that it is Scipio Africanus who created the Praetorian Guard. And just to give a face to the man, this is a coin that represents him, minted in Sicily. So, we know that these Praetorian Guards were created by Scipio Africanus in order to defend Praetors. And we also know that they will eventually become the bodyguards of literally everything that is VIP, senators throughout Roman history, commanders, and all the way up to emperors. But what is a Praetor, since that is their origin? The title of Praetor is kind of complicated in the sense that yes, it would require a dedicated video. I mean, it could be the origins of the Praetor, haha, Metatron. But the reason why it's complex is not even because there is a lot to remember, it's mostly because it depends on the period, it changes a lot. Initially, you can think of it as a military commander, not too different from like the way you would understand a legatus. Yeah, I mean, I'm being superficial here, but I think the best way to focus for us to understand what a Praetor is that it will eventually be institutionalized into a sort of magistrate. With time, eventually Praetors will gain state control over military activities and will have all sorts of legislative power. In fact, according to Livy, in some periods they were even sharing their judicial responsibilities with consuls. All in all, if this is a little confusing, just think of them as this: high statesmen with a lot of power and control of the military. That's a Praetor. As Roman history continues, Praetorians and their numbers are increased from 9 or 10,000, as we were discussing under the first 2 emperors, all the way up to 16,000 men under Emperor Vitellius. Also, at this time, the recruitment limitations are expanded, as we are told, by Cassius Dio. As now, not only you can recruit Praetorians from the entirety of Italy, not just central Italy, but also all the way to the Iberian Peninsula, so modern-day Spain and Portugal, Noricum and Macedonia. But the greatest reforms come under Emperor Septimius Severus. He's the one who completely removes any form of limitations and says, no, you can come from any province of the empire, and regardless of your origins, anyone can become a Praetorian soldier. So why does Septimius Severus do this? Because he was not an Italian Roman? Well, not according to Cassius Dio, who tells us that the reason that motivated the emperor for this specific move, not a very popular one by the way with Italian people, was twofold. On one hand, he wanted to reward every legionary for excellency, and 2, he wanted them to be battle-hardened, so soldiers that actually had fighting and combat experience, veterans. But regardless of what Cassius Dio says, Septimius Severus' operation had the purpose of reforming a stationary reality that he found to be dangerous for his political stability and for his life. Let's not forget that Emperor Pertinax was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard, and they would select a different emperor based on a bribe, as we are told by Didio Julianus, 25,000 sesterces. So Severus just didn't want to risk it. These Praetorians are too involved in high political power and palace intrigue. And the reason why I justify that is, well, he did have assassinated every single Praetorian that was involved in Pertinax's assassination. So, yeah. Still, as I say, Italian Romans don't like it, also because now you've got all sorts of former barbarians in the city getting a lot of money and being paid. And then you hear all of this barbarian speech, of course, from the source, giving you their perspective. But also, the Praetorian Guards are a problem to deal with. He did get quite a lot assassinated and renovated a little bit, but power is power, regardless of where you come from. And it is very difficult to keep Praetorians under control. In fact, think about it. In 217, Macrinus, yes, that Macrinus, the one you see in Gladiator 2, he does become emperor. How? Well, he was the Praetorian prefect under Caracalla, and then he's the one who has Caracalla assassinated while he was in Syria during his campaigns in Parthia. So once again, you could change them as much as you want. Praetorians are still assassinating emperors if they don't like it. And once again, Macrinus gets beheaded after a year, so didn't work. It's Diocletianus, however, Diocletian, who's the emperor who really tries to move differently. He reduces the number of prefective Praetorians, decreases their power, and places his own imperial palace near Byzantium, leaving the Praetorians in Rome. But the one that is my favorite when it comes to this is Emperor Galerius, 4th century AD. He tried to disband the entire corps, destroy them, get rid of them, no more Praetorians, which results in the Praetorian rebellion, and they elect someone else who then increases their numbers. It just doesn't work. In fact, fact, the only one that actually manages to disband permanently the Praetorians is Constantine. But the reason why he's successful is because I think by then, not only was a very powerful man, very well-balanced, powerful man, but by this time, the Italian people were sick of the Praetorians' machinations, and so were the senators. They couldn't stand them. Now let's talk a little bit about the equipment, weapons, and armor of a Praetorian guard. So oftentimes in the movie, we see that they have their own set of weapons and armor. I've already mentioned this on my review of Gladiator 2, because Ridley Scott, since he's completely ignorant when it comes to history, usually just represent them as, well, they're wearing black armor. Not the case. There is no indication in the sources that a Praetorian were wearing any specific color. It is possible that they had some sort of tunics that had specific color, but we just don't know and can't prove it with the sources. However, there is a very interesting piece of iconography that is usually connected to the Praetorians, and it's the Rilievo dei Pretoriani al Louvre. How the heck do you say that in English? Relief. Oh, there we go. Relief. That's rilievo. Okay, so let's have a look at this. This is traditionally considered to be the Praetorians' relief. You'll find it at the Louvre Museum. Now, here's the thing. Before we jump into all sorts of speculations that we can have, discuss the armor, discuss the equipment, let me say that we don't know 100% that these are Praetorians. It is assumed so because of the rich garb that they are wearing. The armor is extremely expensive. Even the shoes, they're not wearing caligae, the normal military boots. They're wearing a much more expensive type called calcae. It is possible that these are Praetorians, we just don't know. It's not like it's written that these are Praetorians. We don't know. But let's assume for a second that the historians are right and these are in fact Praetorians. What do we see? Well, what do we see? It's a very richly decorated Attic helmet. So this would be a little bit of a Greek style helmet, if you will, at least from the perspective of the Romans. And then another thing we see, lorica musculatae. So the muscle cuirass. Is this possible? Well, absolutely. As we were saying before, they were paid 6 times the amount of money that regular soldiers were paid. So absolutely would be, I think, coherent and logical to think that Roman Praetorians would be wearing the best of the best when it comes to armor, also as a sort of status symbol. So, once again, if this is a correct representation of Praetorians, it would be really cool to see them wearing muscle cuirasses and decorated helmets in the movies, rather than just give them freaking leather black segmentata. Another thing that we see, if we zoom in, can we zoom in? Yes, we can. Ooh, look at that. So, another thing that we see when we look at the cheek plates of the helmets is a symbol. It's a little bit removed here, but you can still see it. It's a scorpion. This is not the only image that shows a scorpion in connection with what could be Praetorians, both on cheek plates and shields. Not to mention the following image. For context, this is possibly part of the triumphal arch to celebrate the campaign by Emperor Claudius in Britannia and his victories. The funerary epitaph dedicated to Marcus Pompeius Asper. This is significant because we know that he was a centurion of a Praetorian corps. And once again, we find the symbol of the scorpion. And in theory, as I was saying, there is a French historian that connected the image of the scorpion to Emperor Tiberius, or Tiberius, because of course that was his zodiac sign and he would be the one who consolidated the Praetorian Guard. Now that's fascinating, charming, in fact. But we don't know if that's the case also because there are images of shields with scorpions that predate Tiberius. So then again, we can't be 100% sure. And for those who don't know, an epitaph is a phrase or form written in memory of a person who has died, especially as an inscription on a tombstone. So basically it's a tombstone without the body. That's an epitaph. It's a memorial. All in all, personally, I love Praetorians. I think they're really, really cool. And I wish they would be represented better, both in gaming and in the media. But for today, this is what I had that I wanted to share with you when it comes to the Praetorians and their origins. And if you know more, I forgot to say something, or you would like me to talk about something else and continue this series, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel, become a noble one. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye, Praetorian. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.